What's your call sign, hero? Mocking laughter rippled through the hangar, bouncing off cold steel walls. A woman stood in the crowd, worn brown leather jacket, eyes steady as frost. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. Then she spoke. 2 words. Iron Wraith. The laughter died instantly. Hundreds of veterans straightened like a reflex. The Admiral's smile vanished, replaced by something colder. Because Iron Wraith wasn't a legend, she was the truth the Navy buried. And today, that ghost had spoken. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? And if you still believe honor and courage matter, help keep their legacy alive. What's your call sign, hero? The Admiral's voice sliced through the hangar, mocking, sharp, amplified by laughter. The sound bounced off the steel rafters and glass windows, echoing like applause that wasn't earned. Every head turned toward the woman in the back. She stood still among rows of uniforms, a worn brown leather jacket over a gray shirt, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense knot. Her eyes calm, cold, unreadable, met the stage without flinching. For a moment, even the hum of engines outside went quiet. Then, she spoke. 2 words. Iron Wraith. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. Veterans straightened instinctively, like old instincts had snapped awake. The Admiral's grin died before it finished forming. That was the moment everything began to fall apart. But it didn't start here. It started far away by the sea, where the tide carried the sound of ghosts. Dawn came quietly over Breakwater Cove. Rhea Maddox moved through the fog with the rhythm of someone who preferred silence. She worked at the docks, fixing fishing boats, her hands steady, her expression unreadable. The world around her smelled of salt, diesel, and cold metal. She liked it that way, predictable, mechanical, safe. Every morning she checked the same knots, tightened the same bolts, watched the same horizon. A voice broke the routine. "Coffee," said Ivy, stepping into the light, her breath mixing with the morning mist. 16 years old, tall for her age, brown ponytail, soft eyes that looked nothing like war. Rhea took the cup, her fingers still calloused and scarred. "You forgot breakfast again," Ivy teased. "I didn't forget," Rhea said. "I just didn't need it." They stood in comfortable silence, the kind that only family earns. Then Ivy pulled a folded paper from her backpack. "Field trip next week. Our orchestra's playing at Naval Station Stonebridge." Rhea froze. The wrench slipped from her hand and hit the dock with a hard clang. She didn't pick it up right away. "Stonebridge?" she asked, her tone too calm to sound casual. "Yeah, it's a SEAL commemoration thing. Admiral Dalton Reeve is hosting. They said it'll help raise money for the music program." Ivy smiled, proud. "I even got first chair this time." Rhea didn't answer. Her jaw flexed once. Then she nodded and reached for the wrench. The tool squeaked as it turned a sound sharper than before. "Can you sign this?" Ivy asked, holding the permission slip. Rhea took it, her handwriting crisp, military. When she handed it back, her hand lingered a beat too long. "You could come," Ivy said softly. "They still need parent chaperones. Carry siding sauce." "I've got work," Rhea replied. "You always have work." Rhea's eyes dropped. "Boats don't fix themselves." Ivy sighed, folded the paper, and walked back up the dock. Her reflection flickered on the water, young, bright, unscarred. When she was gone, Rhea stood still, the morning quiet pressing against her chest. For the first time in years, she wasn't listening to the waves. She was listening to the sound inside her head, the one that never stopped. That night, the storm rolled in. Lightning flashed through the workshop's window, throwing light across the tools. Rhea sat alone at the workbench, staring at a metal box on the top shelf. It had sat untouched for nearly a decade. Her fingers brushed away the dust before she brought it down. Inside were pieces of another life. A folded American flag, a challenge coin with Arabic script, and a photograph with blurred faces. The coin was heavy, worn smooth by time. She turned it over. The inscription read, "A life for a life. The debt is paid." Rhea closed her hand around it. "Some debts," she whispered. "Don't stay buried." Her voice was barely audible beneath the thunder. A faint noise outside made her tense boots, or maybe just the storm. Her shoulders went rigid, instincts flicking on like switches she hadn't used in years. She took a slow breath until they faded again. In the cracked mirror by the bench, she saw the faint scar curving above her collarbone, the mark of a forgotten insignia, one that had cost her everything. Her thumb brushed it like checking if it was still real. "One day," she murmured. "Just get through one day." She put the box back on the shelf and turned off the light. But even in the dark, the ghosts didn't sleep. Morning returned, calm and gray. Rhea moved through her routine, but something in her rhythm had changed. Every sound felt louder, sharper, the world holding its breath. When Ivy came down the pier, backpack slung and coffee in hand, she found her mother already waiting with the truck keys. "You're up early," Ivy said. "Field trip day, right?" Rhea asked, voice steady. Ivy blinked. "You're coming?" Rhea nodded once. "You wanted me there." The girl's smile lit up the fog. Yeah, I did." Rhea turned toward the truck, keys clinking softly in her palm. She didn't look back at the workshop, the sea, the ghosts, the box on the shelf. Somewhere deep inside, something old had started to move again. Because in less than 48 hours, she would walk into Hangar B at Naval Station Stonebridge. And when someone asked the wrong question, the world would remember the name they buried. Iron Wraith. The bus rattled down the coastal highway toward Naval Station Stonebridge, its windows catching stripes of late sunlight. Students filled the aisles with laughter and the clatter of instrument cases. Rhea Maddox sat near the back, eyes on the horizon, hands clasped tight enough to make her knuckles pale. Every turn in the road felt too familiar. The cliffs, the airfield fence, the sound of distant aircraft cutting through clouds. She hadn't been this close to a base in 9 years, not since the day she stopped following orders. Ivy leaned over her seat, grinning. "Mom, look, fighter jets!" Her excitement filled the space like music. Rhea forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, impressive." At the checkpoint, the bus slowed. A young Marine boarded, scanning each ID. When he reached Rhea's, his posture changed. "Maddox?" he said softly. The name hung heavy, like it meant something it shouldn't. He typed into his radio, glanced at her again, then handed the badge back without comment. Rhea said nothing. She turned to the window, pretending not to notice how his hand trembled when he saluted. Outside, the gates opened with a mechanical groan that sounded too much like memory. Inside the base, banners stretched across the hangar entrances. Blue flags, silver lettering, Operation Winter Glass, 9 years of honor. Rhea's stomach tightened. The operation she'd tried to forget had become a slogan, and the man responsible was about to stand on a stage and call it victory. Ivy nudged her. "You okay?" Rhea nodded, forcing her voice steady. "Yeah, just long day." But the way her jaw clenched told a different story. The orchestra unloaded instruments, chatting as they entered Hangar B. The space was enormous metal rafters, floodlights, a stage built against an American flag that covered half the wall, rows of chairs filled with sailors, officers, and local donors. Rhea kept to the back, blending into the maintenance area. Her boots echoed softly against the concrete. Her hands stayed in her jacket pockets, fingers brushing the outline of the coin she never left behind. On stage, Admiral Dalton Reeve adjusted his collar before stepping up to the microphone. He looked older but not weaker. His posture was still the same sharp, deliberate arrogance she remembered. Every movement screamed control. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reeve began, voice confident, polished. Operation Winter Glass showed the strength of discipline and unity under fire. He paused as polite applause rippled through the hangar. Rhea's jaw locked. "Unity," she thought. "That's what you call it when you leave people behind." Her thumb pressed hard against the coin in her pocket. Behind Reeve, an aide leaned toward Commander Cole Harkins. "Who's the woman by the scaffolding?" Harkins followed his gaze. "Don't know. Maybe a volunteer." Reeve continued, voice rising over the speakers. "The operators who obeyed orders when chaos threatened, they're the reason this flag still flies." The words rolled smooth, hollow, rehearsed. Rhea's pulse quickened. Each syllable felt like sandpaper on an open wound. She whispered, "You mean the ones who watched others die?" But her words disappeared under the next round of applause. No one heard. No one ever did. Until now. The Admiral turned toward the students. "And now, a tribute from the Harbor Point Youth Orchestra," he announced. "May their music remind us that peace is built on sacrifice." "Nos." Ivy stepped forward with the rest of her class, bow in hand. She looked radiant under the stage lights, young, fearless, untouched by the weight her mother carried. The first soft notes of adagio for strings rose through the hangar. The melody was pure, haunting, slow. It drifted through the air like smoke, curling into corners where ghosts still waited. Rhea closed her eyes, and for a moment, the music wasn't music anymore. It was static. Gunfire. A radio call fading in and out. Abort order confirmed, repeat. Abort confirmed. Her breathing shortened. The notes blurred into shouts, the applause into explosions. She opened her eyes and saw Reeve looking directly at her. The orchestra finished to scattered applause. Rhea stood quickly, ready to leave, but the Admiral's voice stopped her cold. "You there. The woman in the back. Step forward." Heads turned. Cameras swiveled. Ivy froze on stage, bow halfway raised. Rhea didn't move at first. Then she exhaled, stepped out of the shadows, and walked toward the light. Each footstep hit the floor like a drumbeat in an empty field. Reeve smiled, a polished, camera-ready grin. "You look familiar," he said. "Did you serve once?" Rhea's tone was flat. "A lifetime ago." "What unit?" Reeve pressed. "Logistics? Motor pool?" A ripple of laughter spread through the front rows. Even some officers smiled. Rhea said nothing. Her gaze swept across the audience uniforms, ribbons, faces too young to understand. Then it found Ivy. The girl's confusion was plain, her eyes pleading silently for her mother to walk away. But Rhea stayed. Something inside her had already made its choice. Reeve took a step closer, still performing for the crowd. "Well?" he said. "What's your call sign, hero?" "Shiavin Rebraded Benoth." His tone dripped mockery, the kind meant to humiliate. Rhea's voice came quiet, deliberate. "November 23rd. 0300 hours. The laughter faltered. "You ordered an abort while 4 hostages bled out in a basement." She continued. "2 children, ages 6 and 8. I stayed. Riley and Kramer didn't make it out." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The hangar fell silent. The microphones hissed faintly in the stillness. Reeve's face drained of color. Rhea took one more step toward him. "You pinned medals on your chest and called us insubordinate." Her eyes locked on his. "You built your career on their graves." Someone whispered, "It can't be her." Another voice answered, "Iron Wraith. It's real?" Reeve swallowed, his lips trembling. "Who?" Rhea's reply was 2 words, clear and final. "Iron Wraith." The name hit the hangar like a shockwave. Veterans rose instinctively, snapping to attention without orders. Even the young Marines at the back stood frozen, caught between disbelief and awe. Commander Harkins whispered under his breath, "My God, she's real." Reeve stumbled backward, hand gripping the podium. Cameras flashed, capturing a truth no one could bury again. Rhea didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply turned toward the stage, toward Ivy's stunned face. "Time to go, sweetheart." Her daughter hesitated, then followed, and as they walked through the crowd, the only sound was silence, the kind that comes when a ghost decides to speak. By sunrise, the clip had already gone viral. Someone in the hangar had filmed it, the laughter, the silence, the 2 words that turned an admiral into a ghost. Across every news channel, the same headline burned. "Unknown veteran confronts Admiral Reeve, classified mission resurfaces." And Icarius the Criven in the Celt of Never. Outside Breakwater Cove, reporters crowded the dock. Microphones, cameras, shouts, each question like shrapnel. Rhea Maddox didn't answer a single one. She worked as usual, tightening bolts on a weathered trawler. The world might have been on fire, but her wrench kept turning, steady and quiet. It was the only rhythm that still made sense. Inside the house, Ivy watched the footage on repeat. Her mother's voice, low, precise, unflinching, echoed through the living room. By the 4th replay, her hands were trembling around the phone. When Rhea came in, she didn't need to ask what her daughter had seen. "You were there," Ivy said softly. Rhea didn't deny it. "We were supposed to bring them home." That was all she said before walking back out into the salt air. The storm she'd kept buried for 9 years had finally broken the surface, and the Navy wasn't the only one paying attention. That afternoon, 3 black SUVs rolled down the pier. Engines idled. Radios murmured. From the front vehicle stepped Commander Cole Harkins, the same man who'd watched from the stage. He didn't salute. He just nodded once. "Miss Maddox," he said quietly. "We need to talk." Rhea wiped her hands on a rag, eyes steady. "I figured you would." They walked into the workshop. the smell of oil and salt clinging to the air. Harkins placed a thick folder on the table, stamped classified in fading red ink. When he opened it, the truth stared back. Satellite photos, financial ledgers, a still frame of Admiral Reeve shaking hands with a Northbridge Systems executive 2 days before Operation Winter Glass. $48 million, Harkins said. Private contract. Off the books. Rhea's jaw clenched. He sold the mission. Harkins shook his head. Worse. He needed it to fail. He said done again. Another agent, Kavanaugh, powered up a laptop. The speakers hissed before a voice emerged. Reeves, clipped and clinical. Delay abort confirmation until 0 to 600 hours. Repeat delay. 3 hours. Long enough for the ambush. Long enough to make heroes out of corpses. Rhea leaned over the table, her reflection fractured across the glossy photos. He traded lives for budget. Kavanaugh looked up. Not just yours. 4 other ops. Same pattern. Different units. All under his command. The words hit like a silent explosion. Every betrayal she'd suspected now had a date, a name, a number attached. The kind of truth that cuts deeper than bullets. Harkins slid a final document toward her, a subpoena. He's still protected, he said. Politics. Rank. But with your testimony, we can bring him down. Rhea didn't move.
Oh.
You're asking me to open the wound again? And Klein graded his weird Dave Ruman. We're asking you to finish the mission, Harkins said. His voice wasn't commanding. It was pleading. Behind him, thunder rolled across the horizon. The workshop door creaked open. Ivy stood there, eyes red, phone still in hand. She'd heard everything. If you don't tell them, she said softly, he gets away again. Rhea looked at her daughter, the same expression she'd once seen on a boy she carried out of a burning building. Defiance mixed with belief. Night fell heavy and cold. The dock lights flickered against the water as Rhea walked to the edge, the coin in her palm. She turned it over, the Arabic engraving catching the moonlight. A life for a life. The debt is paid. Her breath fogged in the air. Not yet, she whispered. Behind her, footsteps approached, 3 shadows moving through the dark. A voice followed, rough and familiar. Guess we're not the only ones who can't sleep. Everything. Rhea turned. Sawyer Pike stood in the doorway, leaning on a carbon prosthetic. Beside him, Jonah Kincaid carried a folded flag, his expression worn but steady. They didn't shake hands. They didn't need to. The silence between them was older than grief. Kincaid placed the flag on the table. Riley's wife asked me to give you this, he said quietly. She said it belongs with the one who stayed. Rhea's fingers brushed the stars, her throat tight. Pike looked at her, voice low. We thought you were dead. Parts of me were, she said. The coin gleamed faintly between her fingers. Harkins entered last, carrying another envelope sealed, official. The Pentagon hearing is set, he said. They're finally ready to correct the record. Rhea's eyes flicked toward him. And if I don't show? Then Reeve keeps his medals, Harkins said. And another officer like him learns the same lesson, silence wins. The words lingered in the air like a challenge. Outside, waves slapped against the pylons, slow and rhythmic. Rhea stared out toward the dark line of the horizon. Wind tugged at her jacket, carrying the salt and the memory of another coast far away. Finally, she nodded once. I'll come, she said. But not for me. Pike smiled faintly. For them, Rhea's voice barely rose above the tide. For all of them, they stood together in the quiet, the survivor, the witness, the ghosts of men long gone. The gulls cried overhead like distant echoes of gunfire fading with the wind. And for the first time in 9 years, Rhea Maddox turned toward the light. Tomorrow, she would face the past. Tomorrow, she would speak the truth. But tonight, the Iron Wraith finally exhaled. The hearing room inside the Pentagon was colder than Rhea expected. Light poured through tall windows, sharp and white, cutting across the polished floor. Rows of officers, reporters, and civilians filled every seat, all waiting to see if the ghost from that hangar was real. At the front table, Commander Harkins adjusted his notes. He looked composed, but the tension in his jaw said otherwise. To his right sat Rhea Maddox, her uniform jacket restored after 9 silent years, the Iron Wraith patch removed but not forgotten. Ivy sat in the second row, cello case beside her, fingers fidgeting on the strap. She'd never seen her mother like this, calm, focused, ready. When Rhea turned slightly, their eyes met for half a heartbeat. It was enough. The first witness spoke bureaucratic, detached. He talked of timelines, protocols, miscommunication. Each word stacked another wall between truth and accountability. Then it was Ria's turn. The bailiff called her name. The room straightened like gravity had shifted. She stood, raised her hand, and took the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the clerk asked. Ria's answer came steady. "That's all I have left." She sat, microphone inches from her lips, heartbeat steady as a metronome. The prosecutor started easy. Dates, coordinates, personnel lists. She answered each question precisely, voice flat but unwavering. Then came the moment that mattered. "Miss Maddox, why did you remain behind after the abort order?" Ria leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Because the order was wrong," she said. "There were still people alive. I could hear them through the wall." She paused just long enough for the silence to sting. 2 children, crying. Gasps rippled through the press row. The prosecutor's tone softened, almost respectful. "Did Admiral Reeve know?" Ria's eyes didn't move. "He knew. I radioed him 3 times. He cut the line." Whispers spread across the room like a current. Reeve sat across from her, face pale, hands clasped too tightly. For the first time, he wasn't performing. He was cornered. When his lawyer began cross-examining, the tone flipped. "Commander Maddox, you disobeyed a direct order," he said. "You jeopardized lives." Ria didn't flinch. "I saved them," she replied. "The only lives I jeopardized were the ones left behind for profit." The lawyer blinked, off balance. "Profit?" he repeated. Commander Harkins stood before she could answer. "Allow me." He placed a tablet on the evidence screen. The photo appeared Reeve shaking hands with a Northbridge Systems executive, time-stamped 48 hours before Operation Winter Glass. Murmurs erupted, reporters leaning forward. "This was not a mission failure," Harkins said. "It was sabotage." Ria watched Reeve's face crumble in slow motion. His lips parted, searching for words that no longer worked. Across the room, even his allies looked away. The Secretary of the Navy entered quietly through a side door. Her presence silenced the room. She read from a prepared statement, every syllable measured. Final. "The department recognizes grievous failures in Operation Winter Glass. Today, we correct the record." She turned toward Ria. "Master Sergeant Ria Maddox, Iron Wraith. For valor beyond orders and courage under betrayal, the Navy Cross is awarded." Applause rose not loud, but deep and sincere. It wasn't celebration. It was recognition. The kind that comes too late, but still matters. Ria accepted the medal with both hands. Her thumb brushed its surface before she set it back on the podium. "The real honor belongs to the ones who didn't walk home," she said quietly. Cameras flashed, capturing that moment, not the medal, but her expression. Calm, tired, free. Ivy wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. When the hearing adjourned, the crowd shifted toward the door. Ria stayed seated, watching the light crawl across the floor. For the first time, the weight on her shoulders felt lighter. Then, a shadow appeared beside her, young, polite, uncertain. "Miss Maddox?" the man said softly. He couldn't have been older than 25. Ria turned, cautious. "Do I know you?" He nodded slowly. "You saved my life." "Alcaria, November 23rd. I was 8 years old." Her breath caught. "Samir?" He smiled, eyes wet. "I'm a doctor now. Pediatric trauma. My family made it out because of you." Said. "Who?" He handed her a worn photograph. 4 faces, alive and smiling in the sun. "My father wanted you to have this. He said the debt was never yours to carry." Ria stared at the picture. She saw a boy covered in dust, now a man who saved children of his own. Her voice broke. "Guess he was right." Ivy stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Mom," she whispered. "You can stop running now." Ria's lips curved faintly. "Maybe. But ghosts don't run. They just find new directions." Outside, snow drifted through the Washington air, soft and clean. Reporters waited, but the noise didn't reach her anymore. As Ria and Ivy walked down the steps, veterans in uniform stood at attention, silent salutes rising in the cold. For the first time, Iron Wraith didn't sound like a ghost story. It sounded like peace reclaimed, and somewhere behind them, Admiral Reeve's empire of lies finally began to collapse. By the time Ria and Ivy returned to Breakwater Cove, The sea had gone quiet again. The wind had lost its bite. The waves moved slower, and the air smelled of salt and diesel home. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. The old truck groaned to a stop near the dock. Rhea stepped out, boots crunching against gravel, her Navy cross tucked in her coat pocket. She didn't need to look at it to remember what it cost. Inside the workshop, sunlight spilled across her workbench, tools lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. The folded flag rested on a high shelf beside the coin and the compass that had guided her back. She hung her jacket on a nail and exhaled, the sound soft and human. There was no more courtroom, no Admiral, no ghosts demanding to be heard, just the smell of oil, the creak of wood, and the slow hum of life restarting. Ivy unpacked her cello near the window. The afternoon light caught the varnish, painting it gold. She smiled at her mother. "You know, people online keep calling you a hero," Rhea smirked. "Heroes don't usually make it this far." Ivy frowned, but didn't argue. Instead, she drew her bow across the strings. Slow, steady, almost like breathing. The notes filled the room. Quiet, but alive. For the first time, the sound didn't drag her back to the battlefield. It grounded her here, in the present, where the world was still salvageable. A knock echoed from outside. Rhea turned, expecting silence, but saw a familiar truck pulling onto the pier. Sawyer Pike climbed out, limping slightly, 2 steaming cups in hand. "Thought you might want coffee that didn't taste like gun oil," he said. Rhea chuckled, taking 1 cup. "That's a bold assumption." He grinned. "Heard you made history again." She shook her head. "History's overrated. It just means someone else is rewriting it." They sat on overturned crates, watching gulls drift low over the water. Neither spoke for a while. They didn't need to. Finally, Sawyer broke the silence. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" "Peace." Rhea nodded slowly. "Stranger than war, sometimes." He glanced toward the horizon. "Think it'll last?" Rhea looked down at the coffee, steam curling in the cold air. "For her sake," she said. "I hope so." But her voice didn't sound entirely convinced. When he left, twilight was creeping in. The marina lights flickered to life, reflections dancing across the water. Inside, Ivy practiced again, her bow carving soft waves of sound through the night air. Rhea sat by the bench, wiping grease from her hands, staring at the coin and compass. The Arabic engraving shimmered faintly. "A life for a life. The debt is paid." She traced the edge with her thumb, remembering the boy she carried from that basement. A soft knock came from the door. She turned and froze. Samir Rahmani stood there, older now, his posture straight, his eyes kind. Behind him, a woman held a small bouquet of white lilies, and a child peeked shyly from behind her coat. Rhea's breath caught. "You found me," Samir smiled. "You're not that hard to find anymore." They came inside, the scent of lilies mixing with the salt air. For a while, they just talked about his work, his patience, the life he'd built from the ashes of that night. Ivy listened, wide-eyed, as he described how one act of courage had shaped everything that came after. Before they left, Samir reached into his pocket and handed Rhea a small cloth bundle. "My father wanted you to have this," he said. "His compass. It guided us through the desert when we escaped." Rhea opened it carefully, the brass worn smooth, the needle still steady. "I can't take this," she said softly. "You already have," Samir replied. "You showed us the way once. It's only right it finds its way back." He smiled, then added, "You never needed a compass, Miss Maddox. You were one." The words stayed with her long after they drove away. She stood by the window, watching their taillights fade into the night, the lilies now resting in a jar beside the flag. The compass lay open on the table, its needle pointing north as the tide rolled in. The next morning came soft and gray. The horizon blurred into mist as fishing boats left the harbor one by one. Rhea worked quietly, tuning an engine, humming a piece of Ivy's music under her breath. Her phone buzzed once on the bench. She ignored it until it buzzed again. The screen lit with a message that stopped her cold. "Iron Wraith. We need to talk. Task Force Sentinel." Attached was a grainy satellite photo. A compound somewhere near the Gulf of Aden. 5 American hostages. 24 hours on the clock. Rhea's hands went still. The hum of the sea seemed to fade, replaced by the low, familiar thrum of duty. Behind her, Ivy's laughter drifted through the open door, bright and unguarded. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed one word. When? The reply came seconds later. 0400. Briefing secure. Rhea set the phone down beside the compass and the coin. Her reflection stared back from the metal older, quieter, but not done yet. Outside, the tide climbed against the pylons, whispering like it remembered her name. She zipped her jacket halfway, grabbed her keys, and paused at the doorway. Ivy's music carried on behind her, sweet and sure, a melody she'd never forget. Rhea looked to the sea, eyes steady, breath slow. Somewhere beyond the horizon, people were waiting just like before. And the ghost the world thought it buried was awake again. Iron Wraith had returned. The sun broke over the water as she stepped onto the dock. Wind tugged at her hair, the scent of salt sharp in the air. And with the first glint of daylight, Rhea Maddox, mother, soldier, survivor, walked toward it without hesitation. Because peace was never meant to last forever. Not for people like her. And somewhere, across the ocean, another story was already calling her name. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.